Welcome back to Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. We got a special edition show this weekend or this week. We'll have another show again next week, but we've got a new show this week with Joel Smith from Close Racing Supply. That's where Chad and I are headed this weekend to do the final RTI chassis school. And so we're looking forward to that. And just got off of had a great time up there at the Midwest Motorsports show in Rochester that Chad and the folks from Kevco put on. I had a great time. There was a fair amount of people. I mean, I thought there was a great group of booths, and I thought the show was pretty good. So how was your day today, Chad?
Yeah, pretty wide open Monday here again for March Madness. So trying to recoup from the long weekend and working out there at Rochester. We had a great show. Great to see everybody. And like you said, we had a great group of vendors and went by well. And the only problem we had is my truck is broke down in Rochester. So if that's the only problem that happens and the show goes off smooth and we dodged the snowstorm and it sounded like everybody sold some stuff. So I think it was a pretty good day.
Yeah. So how about you, Joel? What's going on at Close Racing Supply?
No, just, another typical Monday, like Chad was saying there. Pretty busy, obviously, just like everybody in this game. But just kind of getting ready for that deal this weekend, our open house there Friday, Saturday. And, of course, you guys coming out for the RTI class. Just kind of getting ready for all that and trying to take care of all the customers at the same time.
Well, and that's the big thing that people, especially within driving or within a fair driving distance, is the fact that you are having an open house, and you have some vendors that are going to be part of the open house that are coming in, which is really exciting. And then you've got some pretty good pricing on some things, and of course you've got such a huge inventory that there's something there for everybody.
Sure. Yep, definitely. I would say any type of dirt oval track car, we got a pretty good inventory to take care of at competitive pricing. And this weekend for the open house, we'll have some pretty good discounts on a lot of good products.
Yeah, that sounds real good. And I know for the chassis school, we've got, help me out with the people, but we've got All Stars.
Yep. So Kurt Spalding from All Star.
Kurt Spalding, and of course, I was just going to probably just let him have my mic and let him teach the school because he spanked everybody down in Florida this year. So I'm thinking, I don't know what.
Yeah.
The guys that don't come just to listen to him, they're missing something here.
He might just be signing autographs the whole time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, dang. And
yeah. So Kurt, and then. And Spike from Willwood will be here. DJ Williams from DJ Racing Solutions, which he last year was his first time ever doing something like this, and I think he did a pretty good job educating.
Oh yeah, great job.
And I think a lot of our customers really learned a lot from him that used it throughout the season.
Yep. And then of course we've got Chad and myself, and I think that's about it for the panel.
Yep.
And then you've got Bill Workman coming from AFCO for the open house.
Yep. Kurt from Winters Performance Ruins will be here. Scott from Bay Headers will be here. So we got a couple extra people going to be here for the open house part also. So.
And Bob's going to be here from All Star too, right?
Yep. Bob Baldwin from All Star. He'll definitely be here helping the staff and taking care of customers during the open house.
Awesome. Well, it's always such a nice event, and unless there's weather issues, everything goes. That deal last year I thought went super slick. That was everything went smooth, and I can't complain. And the schools this year, I don't know whether it's just maybe my attitude's better. I don't know what it is, but I thought all the schools this year were better than last year. I don't know. It seemed like the 4-link school, the guys that were here were very engaged, and so hopefully we can carry that on through the weekend. All right, we got our first question. Jeremiah wants to know, let's see here, what are your thoughts on moving your ballast to the center of the car high as possible, still maintaining 200 pounds left rear bite on a 3-link car? We have a weight of 2,500 pounds. Well, 200 pounds of left rear bite is way too much, in my opinion. The car's going to be out of balance quite a bit. It's going to be easy to spin out. Um, I think you're going to be lacking side bite. Uh, I like moving weight to the center. I think that's a pretty good deal. I don't know what your definition of moving it high is, but I wouldn't move anything higher than the fuel cell. That seems to work pretty good. But moving it to the center, but I would strongly consider less left rear bite. And that'd be my thoughts anyway. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on all the basics there. That's, like you said, I don't think you need to get too high. And I do agree with the left rear bite also. That's a lot of left rear. That thing's probably going to be a little free in.
Yeah, that's kind of what my experiences have been. I still, man, I'm in that 80-pound range. Just seems to always be a kind of a magic number that I've used over the years and had pretty good success. Dustin, dang, I had to get on the 0 turn today.
Yeah, it was 75 and sunny here. It's going to be lawn mowing time soon.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Sure. Taking time away from the race car. Well, that mowing the lawn deal. Yeah, I don't know. I'd find some older children or older child that wants to ride a lawnmower myself. But anyway. So what are you going to have on display? What kind of car are you going to have on display, Joel, for this weekend?
We're just kind of debating. We got a couple choices, but I think we're probably going to have one of our stock clip cars, kind of like street stock cars that race around north of here and around this area. We're building a new one, so we should be far enough ahead on that. Something we can kind of show off, and then I think we got a modified too. That's got all components bolted on it, just no sheet metal. It's kind of cool to look at. It's got a lot of Wehrs products and things like that on it. So I think we got a couple options we'll probably have around.
Awesome. Well, that'd be great because that kind of stuff is always great for people to look at because like if you're talking about something in the class, then on break they can go over and look at it and they can kind of that's what he was talking about, understand that. So I think that's a pretty cool deal. Jamie wants to know, guys, what I'd your opinion on welding brackets on the rear end. I was told by a chassis builder to tap holes and put bolts in rather than welding it on the rear end due to the heat flex of the tube. I don't, I think there's a little bit of an issue to that heat flexing thing, but what we do, like when we build rear ends, weld all the brackets on it, then we re-straighten the rear end out so that the rear end's still perfectly straight. The bolt deal, I don't know. What's your thoughts, you guys?
Go ahead, Joel.
Oh, I mean, the bolt and the caliper bracket on definitely is nicer and cleaner, and there's some nice mounts out there nowadays that are pretty HD, don't have much flex to them. You usually need 2 bolts in it. One's probably not going to be enough, but I mean, welding's okay also, but if a guy gets a little carried away with, how much heat he puts in it, and how much weld he puts in it, sure, you could pull her in a little bit. So I don't think there's anything wrong with welded ones, but I think at the end of the day, I think a bolt-on bracket that's pretty HD with a couple bolts is probably a nicer option.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the capabilities to straighten it after you weld on it, if you do warp it a little bit, then if you can drill and tap the holes, that would be probably the best option for you. So it kind of depends on what you want to do, but you do need to be careful welding because it will actually move it around.
Yeah. Dustin said he can't let the kids on it because Chad doesn't build parts for the zero turn.
Yeah, no lawnmower trickery.
Not yet.
Oh, hey, that's another avenue, man.
Yeah, I
Dress
got a hood
up,
pin.
dress up.
I got a hood pin mount on my side by side,
Oh, okay.
but not for the hood. It's for hanging stuff off of on the back. So
Awesome. Yeah, no doubt.
we sold a 217 breather tank today to a side by side. So some of the stuff does cross over into some of those markets.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. Jamie also wants to know, what are your thoughts on stock car pinion or pinion angle on the stock car? We used to actually run about 7 degrees, and that rear end doesn't actually rotate a whole lot, so you don't get a tremendous amount of pinion angle movement there. So we've actually cut back to the point where we've cut back to 5 degrees. Just like I said, just basically because the rear end doesn't pivot as much as something with a pull bar or something like that would be. The ideal thing is trying to figure out how much the rear end will move, and when you get steer involved, I mean, there's going to be some pinion angle gain. Uh, you just don't want it to go past zero. And the ideal thing is to get the thing so that it actually goes zero. And our normal question that we have weekly is, what are our thoughts on the tight Helix rear spring? I'll let you have that one, Chad.
Yeah, I mean the tight Helix kind of has its time and its place. So I mean, if you're on a track that's smooth all the time and you're not going to get any rough, or you're not going to go up and hit the cushion, you could probably get away with it. It needs an excessive amount of travel to get to that point where it progresses too. So I mean, there's definitely something there in a certain situation, kind of maybe driver preference, but rate is rate. So if the spring has 200 pounds of rate and it's traveling 1 inch, and I think they both have 200 pounds and 1 inch of travel, when you get the more spring material you have, whether it's a tight Helix or just a front spring, there's front springs that have more and less coils. So the more material you stress, the faster it's going to release. So that's the biggest thing with the tight Helix is they call it the open speed of it. What Frank talks about is the open speed of it, and it goes back to ride height extremely fast. So, but if you're going to develop a hole or the track is rough or you're on the cushion, I would not run that because you're going to coil bind it, and that's usually when you crash.
Yeah, because it would get instant side bite in a hurry. Jeffrey wants to know, what our thought on roof length, positioning fore and aft. Our stuff, we stay right on the IMCA limit, whatever the legal limit is, and we stay with that. So, I think there's some advantage to length. However, you guys get to run a spoiler. Now, the fact that this year you don't have as big a spoiler on the open motor stuff, I think that roof thing would be pretty good. We still center everything pretty much. If we get something that's all real wacky on there, IMCA kind of frowns on that, and due to the fact that we have many customers with the same product, we're kind of limited in what we can do to stay within the rules. What's your opinion on that?
I would tell somebody, take a look at their lay mount cars. I mean, those guys got stuff figured out as far as, aerodynamic stuff. So the way they're mounting stuff is probably the right way to have it. I probably on most race cars, really. But, we always like to put big roofs on cars, or as big as we can. And I think you kind of want them back as much as you can too, as far as front to rear.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, air is the only thing you get for free. You got to use as much of it as you can.
Um, I do know that when the nose panel goes away on the nose, the thing won't turn in a 40-acre field. So air definitely has a big effect on things. Steve, IMCA Sport Mod. How much dynamic roll steer is ideal? Um, it's kind of a customer preference. I still use that 2 3/4 to 1 or 2 3/4 to 3 inch steer number. I think that works pretty good on most racetracks. Now, there's some racetracks, a little less steer. I never go over 3. Every time I've ever tried going over three, it actually made the car too free. And so I've kind of stayed under that. Seems like to me, if when we went down to around 2.5 or whatever, sometimes it gets just a little fidgety in the middle of the corner where the car can get a little throttle tight for a split second. So, like I said, we stay pretty close to that 2 3/4 inch movement in that range there. Let's see here. Does it matter where the brake caliper is mounted on a 3-link, front or back? Is there any benefit? No. The race car wouldn't know one way or the other. The big thing in mounting the brake is getting it so that the bleed hole is 100% straight up, so that you get all the air out of the line. That's kind of what I've always used as a rule of thumb. Ronnie, on a 4-link modified, what do you lose or gain going from 100-pound spring to 40, 50, 80, 20-pound inch? What track conditions would prompt you to make those changes? What's your thoughts on that, Chad?
Well, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't go anything under 100 just because of how inconsistent them soft ones are. But you're going to have more preload, more pre-wind in it to hold ride height. So the taller spring you put in there, the more windings, kind of like the tight helix thing. You're tightening up the helixes, and the more stored energy you have, the faster it's going to pop up. So the taller, softer left rear spring, when you go into the corner, it goes up quicker. So, but the inconsistency of that rate and the lifespan of the 60s and the 70s, 80s, whatever they are, I mean, you're killing them things in a couple nights. Joel, I don't know if you have any feedback on that super soft stuff, but man, there's guys, they're just killing the free head of that spring just because that's the heaviest corner of the car, and you're putting the lightest spring there. You're putting that amount of load on it, and it just doesn't last.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any of my customers that thought they needed to go, that soft, obviously a couple of weeks later, we're putting a little bit more spring back in the car, or replacing what they had in it because it was too soft,
Yeah, I've never had any luck with anything softer than an 80-pound, but the 100 that's our rule of thumb spring. Let's see here. Richard, start racing in upstate New York. 71 years of pavement to dirt, a few different times. Airborne Park Speedway, half-mile track, chassis by Kezar. Looking for a good shock, 15-degree bank, tracks 3,400-pound car. Love the show. Well, I'll tell you what, the best thing for you to do would be, if you were interested, is call the shop and ask to talk to Braden. Braden's pretty familiar with those heavier cars, and he's had a lot of experience with the IMCA stock car, which is a it's a 2,900-pound car, but they're usually around 3,000 pounds. He would be able to give you a good idea of the options that we have available and get you hooked up. Rod, what does pinion angle effect have in the car? What it does applies to traction? Well, some guys swear that you have a lot of pinion angle, you get more traction. Statistically, I don't see how that makes a tremendous amount of difference as long as it doesn't go past 0. I like the fact pinion angle really, in all reality, needs to be where the pinion is going to be in dynamic. And when the pinion in dynamic, if you can have that drive shaft run as straight as you can, it's going to have the least amount of resistance. It's going to give you the most amount of horsepower. And I think it's just, that's just kind of our rule of thumb that we've always used in the past. What's your guys' opinion?
Yeah, that's kind of $1 million question. That question comes up all the time, really, and I would agree with you. I think anybody that thinks that they tweaked their pinion angle a little bit and got more traction is probably because where they had it was some type of bind, and it just kind of freed the horsepower up a little bit more. But yeah, I think people tend to get too aggressive with that sometimes and think it's for the better, and it's not necessarily the case. You just need to make sure that you don't have any bind throughout travel, and not only that, but just make sure that you don't do something to cause gear failure. That's the biggest thing. You see a lot of people with gear failure because they're trying different pinion angle that's really not necessary.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, I have a little asphalt background. So, I mean, when them two angles are like this, the drive shaft is at a downhill, this is at a downhill. And when the axle wraps, it's trying to go this direction. So I think the theory is when you have more pinion angle, it takes more to get the wrap back. So it delays that and gives it a little bit more traction, if you will, they say. But, I don't know if anybody's ever proved that theory or not. But I know that on the asphalt cars, they don't have as much axle wrap or pinion wrap. So we did play with that more on the asphalt than we ever did on the dirt, just because you have so much pinion wrap. But and we did notice a difference on the asphalt, but it's probably not nearly as noticeable on the dirt just because of how much more aggressive everything is.
I think the important thing is what the back of the transmission looks like where it's pointing. I think some people look at that are worried about pinion angle. Well, you see some cars with the back of the transmission kind of up in the air and really looks like it's causing drive shaft problems, but that needs to be tilted down a little bit, I think, and even pointed towards the left rear a little bit. I mean, you see more and more people doing that, and that's the way it should be.
I agree.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Let's see here. Don's checking in from Neha, Wisconsin. Nina. Zach, recommend wider tread width or narrower tread width? Well, it depends on what you're racing. I still tend to like the wider car, wider tread width. I just think there's more stability. It makes it easier to tune. It's not as sensitive to tune to. That's just kind of what I've experienced over the years. And of course, I always like to have the front end wider than the back of the car so that the front end's definitely doing the steering rather than the back end doing the steering. Now, Ronnie says, thank you. Tori, please design a front adjustable spring spacer that has more clearance on a stock mount shock than what is available.
Joel, do you have anything for that?
No, but I always wondered the same thing. We don't sell a whole lot of adjustable spring spacers just because most places are open to jack and bolts, but I've always wondered the same thing. I mean, it's anytime you see a guy's stock mount shock, which I'm sure Bob sees it a lot, there's, it's always dinged up a little bit from that spring spacer. So yeah, that's maybe something to look into. They definitely need some more clearance for sure.
Yeah.
Would that be a 5-inch spring or a 5.5-inch spring?
Probably 5.5, I think, metric stuff,
Most of it would be a 5.5.
Yeah, like hobby stock where they can't run a screw jack, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that would be a 5-inch spring that would need that.
Right.
Most all that stuff is like Joel said, it's that metric front end.
But here's what I think though. Throughout the years, everybody was accustomed to running pretty stiff springs, so the size of that for the inside diameter of that spring, that cup needed to be a little smaller, and that's where they're losing clearance. So maybe somebody needs to make something that's for a little bit lighter springs like guys are using today, and you can open that up a little bit. That's probably all it needs, really.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it's a pretty big difference if you go from a 1200 to a
Oh,
850.
yeah.
You know, that's probably over almost a quarter of an inch, I would say.
Yeah. And that's probably all they really need, to be honest with you. If they could get a quarter, that would help a bunch.
I'll do some digging.
All right, sounds good. Connor, what's your opinion on four-wheel brakes versus three-wheel brakes with a right front shutoff? Um, this is just my opinion. I'm not sure what um, Chad and Joel, but I don't like a three-wheel brake car. I think the cars, once again, you're ca- you're trying to make the car do something that it should do on its own by shutting off that right front brake. I would much rather run a softer, the way the brake companies are nowadays, they have such a great wide variety of brake compounds that you can put a fairly soft compound in the right front and a fairly aggressive compound in the fairly soft compound in the right front and a fairly aggressive one in the left front and kind of do the same thing, but you still have the stability of the four-wheel brakes. And the biggest thing where you're going to notice it, like if you get in an accident or whatever, I've seen, I got to ride home from Kansas City one night with a driver that, of course, we spent till 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning in the hospital because he broke his wrist because he got caught in an accident with three-wheel brakes and got caught in the steering wheel. That's probably the longest ride from Kansas City I've ever had in my life was listening to him moan and groan, and I know he had to be in substantial pain, but whatever. So I've never, like I said, I like the car to be balanced. And I think if you have to use three-wheel brakes, the car needs adjustment, needs to be better balanced. What do you guys think?
I like what you said about if you are racing with a three-wheel brake and you got to stop in a hurry because you're going to spin out.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, too, you talk about like IMCA stuff, you can't do anything with piston sizes, but, in our part of the country, we sell a lot of smaller pistons for the right front. But, I always tell a guy, if you need to run without the right front brake, your stuff's just too tight,
Yeah, no doubt.
And I also like to kind of say that, we need that right front brake force to help the car work the way it's supposed to work. It's not just about stop,
Yeah,
So,
and almost anymore, we're to the point where the way they've got the cars are working nowadays. I mean, you need at least 40% front brake most of the time. So, Tori, most spring spacers work for both size springs. I've always wondered if there was a way to do it with the OD.
Well, I got a lot of OD cups, so definitely could try that.
well, if it's designed to do both springs, there's the problem right there. If everybody's putting 5.5-inch springs and something's designed to take a 5-inch spring, there's where all your play is, your slop.
That's where the clearance is.
Way too small. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I made a note. I'll work on it. I got a pretty good idea what to do. I didn't realize it was as big of a problem as it is, but that makes a lot of sense now. So we'll take a look at it.
Awesome.
We like making parts.
Yep.
And I think that
Speaking of that's a great question I got for you. How long does it take for you to tear down your booth at a trade show?
Like last weekend?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got those 4 carts. So basically you take the wraps off the carts, take the parts on the tables off, put them in the totes underneath. I mean, I guess I didn't look at the clock, but we were done and ready to load in about, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Really? Man, because I walked by there and I'm looking at all those parts, and one of the thoughts that was in my head was, oh my God, could you imagine what this must be like to set up and tear down?
The worst year I ever had was so PRI before I built those carts, we had all these bolt together displays and just a complete monstrosity, and I feel like I have to have every damn part on display, and according to my wife last week, and So we had this monstrosity, and oh my God, it took us, I think, 2 hours the one year at Indianapolis. And I'm like, that's it. I said, we went from one extreme to the other. So we had a really cool cart built before this monstrosity where we folded the arms in and we're in the trailer. The last time we went to Orlando, we were packed, and my dad left the parking lot in 15 minutes. We shut the arms on the display, put the banner down, out the gate, in the trailer, strapped, gone, 15 minutes. Wow. But it could be because the show was so miserable when it was in Orlando that maybe that was why that happened. But yeah, so I've learned a lot about just using carts and just getting out quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we were fortunate because we didn't have, we had basically had some shocks on display. We were going to bring radiator screens, but they're just a finger cutter. And I wasn't about to have my fingers ripped up. And so we just decided to kind of come light, and it actually went pretty smooth. I was pretty pleased.
It's amazing that you can take almost an entire day to set up a show, and in 25 minutes, it's gone. Yeah. Like, everybody's just, let's get the heck out of here.
Well, I mean, it's just like when we came back from Close Racing last year. I mean, there was stuff still in totes that had never been touched since we come from there. And it's like, oh, how did this get in this tote? This is supposed to go in that tote,
Yeah.
But anyway, Tori, I'd be glad to help with input pictures, videos on my front end. Thank you, and love all the products and this show as well. Well, thanks, Tori. We appreciate that. And Chad does an awesome job of coming up with new products. And Mike says it was 9 minutes. Cody, what did back in the day, did IMCA do away with the lift arm? Well, the reason they did away with the lift arm was because, and this was a skyrocket thing, Kelly's cars were so good when they had the lift arm in the car, using it for braking only, and then the torque link in the car for traction only. So it was a combination of both, which in reality is ideal, because when you put the braking on the lift arm, when the car would go into the corner and you lift, it would pull down in the center of the corner instead of trying to lift the back of the car or whatever. It pulled down in the middle of in the center of the car. Well, so then all of a sudden this had too many devices in there, and so IMCA ended up outlawing the lift arm, and it's been that way ever since.
Yeah, the old brake bars were pretty badass back then.
I mean, I tell you what, those were great handling race cars. I mean, yeah. You could tune that thing, and it just pulled down in the middle of the corner, and you'd load the whole car on corner entry, and they were awesome. And his cars were pretty dominant at that point in time, and yeah, so evidently they must have decided that it was because of that brake bar, which basically was a lift bar, just using the brake portion of it.
I think Bob Harris was another one that did that for years.
Yep.
His cars, and they were obviously always pretty good UMP cars. I don't know if they're still doing that today, but I think they can. It's legal to do, but.
Yeah, that really made the car very stable on corner entry, and did a great job. Tyler, 3-link modified. What is a good starting point for left rear bar angle? And is this dropping the bar on the chassis good for slick, or raising it on the rear end? Left rear, you would want to actually lower it on the rear end and raise it on the chassis. We run, and I don't know what number this actually is, Chad can tell us, but we run the second hole from the bottom, or the bottom on the actual rear end side, and then statically we run our left rear bars at 26 degrees of inclination, and then when it's in dynamic, it's about 45 to 46 degrees inclination, and that seems to work pretty well. Some guys take some of the angle out of it, because they think it loads the left rear too quickly. That's kind of why we run angle with a longer left rear bar than our right rear bar is. to still be able to run the angle, but take some of the quickness out of it with length. Yeah, it seems to work pretty good.
Yeah, tuning that there's big gains there to tune the length of the bar and keep the angle. You're keeping the drive angle, but you got a long bar to slow the motion. So, I'd say that a lot of the left rear cages start at the 4.5, but they generally end up down at the 5 or 5.5 on the left rear cages.
Matthew, Joel, Chad, and Bob, you all done a great job and provide great products for the racers. You guys look tired tonight. Well, in this time of the year, Mondays have a tendency to do that to you. And so I can appreciate that we probably do look a little tired. You guys look tired. I can only imagine how busy the three of you are. Well, and of course, I come up with the bright idea that, with the Rochester show and the Midwest Motorsports show, that we just get up super early in the morning and go up in the morning. So, I got up at 3:30 in the morning and we drove to Rochester, and then we got done and we drove home. So needless to say, it ended up being a 14-hour day, which, for an old guy, I actually think it took a little bit more out of me than I expected it to. But, I still had a good day yesterday, and today was probably a little slow, which I'm usually always a day behind those deals. But that's why we have good help at the shop, because they can all do their jobs and I can just supervise. Joshua, any benefits to heavy left rear lower control on GM 4-link? I don't know for sure, Joshua, what you're talking about there.
Heavy trailing arm for traction.
Yeah.
Does anybody make one? Joel, you make one?
Yeah, we do and have, it's just a rules thing, some places in the country it's okay and some places it's not, but yeah, I think it's just one more thing that could potentially give the car a little more left rear traction, but just like anything else, it's not magic, and everything else has got to be right too. But yeah, it'd be a good thing to run if you could.
Russell, while running a chain on the left rear, do you want it so that it keeps tension on the spring, or would you allow it to travel as much as possible without the spring coming out? We've seen it done both ways. I still like to have, and that's kind of the advantage of running the softer left rear spring with more load in it. I kind of like it to the point where if it doesn't come off the spring, like with the sport mods and some of the stock cars, it's still probably going to come off the spring because we can't, run the chain like we would like to in certain situations. But on the modifieds, I think the majority of people, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, are kind of going with leaving a little bit of tension on the spring.
Yeah, I would agree. I think pretty much everybody's loaded on the left rear through the entire motion.
Yeah. Yeah, if you were running like a 225-pound left rear, you wouldn't be able to load it as much. So then it's probably going to come off the spring. But if you're down in that 125 or 100-pound range, you definitely would. Kyle, what's your thoughts on stock car bodies? IMCA wants to crack down on people making their own bodies, but allowing the Camaro. Do you think we should be allowed to save money or forced to be manufactured manufactured bodies? Kyle, that would be a very highly political question for me to answer. And I would probably shoot myself in the foot if I told you my true opinion on that. So you can kind of take it from there.
The Camaro looks cool.
The Camaro looks pretty cool. It is a little expensive. The problem is they've got to. They should have actually in my opinion, they should have actually cracked down on this sooner. because I understand the people making their own bodies and stuff. What happens with that, anytime you allow that to happen, everybody can edge the rule a little further, a little further, a little further, a little further. And then pretty soon it's so far out of whack that they're forced to do something. And I kind of think that's where IMCA is coming from at this point in time, is the fact that they just don't want it to get out of hand. It isn't that they want you to spend more money. It's a fact that they need to have some way of controlling this, because otherwise it's just going to get out of hand. I mean, it's just going to be like all the other divisions that have bodies, stuff like that. So that's kind of, I can see both sides of the situation. Damian, what's your opinion on plastic
versus
aluminum wheel covers?
I think aluminum are outlawed just about everywhere, ain't they?
As far as I know, I mean, I think an IMCA you can't. I don't think you can run an aluminum one. I think it's got to be a plastic one. But maybe you can, because I mean, some of them chrome-looking ones have got to be aluminum. So
I think Damian, he's from New York State, and I'm pretty sure in the state of New York it's actually the other way around. I think that they won't allow plastic because they feel like they fall off too easy, and they want aluminum, which is kind of odd, but yeah, it's just kind of strange.
Well, when that thing flies off, I'd rather have it lose momentum than not lose momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no doubt. Steve, hey guys, if you had no ride height rules on a stock car, what would you prefer as far as side to side? Well, I mean, I would definitely run my left side a little bit higher and my right side a little bit lower, just because those things have a tendency to be, they have a tendency to not get on the right rear as much as we would like them to. You would think that with a higher center of gravity that they would, but you can't do a whole lot. Oh boy, you can't do a whole lot with moving that right rear tire in because of where the frame's at. So to get side biting them things can be a little bit of a trick. So that would be my opinion. And I would definitely do like a modified. I'd run my left rear high so I could get more angle in it, and my right rear low so that it went down in the corner, and scrub some air, close up that front end air gap, keep the air going over the car. Oh, I think I might have you read this one, Chad. Oh, wait a minute. We are Les. Pull. The pull bar mounting plates on the rear end. How far forward or aft center line should bolts be positioned to increase or decrease traction? You can keep the same pinion angle and just move the plates forward or aft in rotation of the center line. I think it kind of depends on the division of the division that you're running. If it's a modified, I always had the theory that whatever my torque link was moving, if it was moving 1.5 inches, then I will enter it 1.5 inches in front of the center, so that when the car was in dynamic, that you were at zero. Now, some guys believe, and I'm not saying that they're right or wrong because I have not really proved it, but have went the opposite way and go more where they start in the center and then let them rotation move to the back. I know your opinion is more on the backside.
Well, I mean, yeah, as we've trended towards shorter distance traveled on a pull bar, then we can go back. Back in the day when even not so much even back in the day, like a UMP car, the pull bars travel a lot more than an IMCA car. We're traveling about 1.25 inches. There's some UMP guys that are still traveling 2.5. So there's no way they could go behind center line. It would cam over. So it depends, like you said, it depends on how far you're traveling the pull bar. And if you're only traveling 1 inch, we got a lot of guys that are traveling on that big 660 puck, you're traveling about an inch, sometimes even less. So then you can slide it back on the rear end, which gives you a different leverage point and does make a little bit more traction. Whether or not you're going to notice that's like Bob said, it's to be determined. And I don't know if anybody could actually feel it or not.
What's your experiences, Joel?
Oh, I think once again, kind of a loaded question. If you remember, years and years ago, we were always behind. And once again, and getting 2.5 inches of travel, or what we thought we needed 2.5 inches of travel. And we always thought we had decent traction. And then the fad come where we were moving them forward and got the cars better, getting in the corner, more speed, more momentum. But now we're kind of seeing a mixture nowadays. I think of some guys behind, some guys over top, some guys a little forward, but I think the guys that are behind think that they're gaining a little bit of traction and not hurting corner entrance at all.
Yeah, the question then is, did you move it back and you made the bar longer, or did you move the whole bar back in the car? I mean, if you made the bar longer, that's where the extra traction comes from, because it's a longer device, so it delays it. So it should give it more traction. So that's another way to think about it, is if you just kept the same length and moved the whole bar back, which most cars you can't do that on the front.
Right. You have to add length to it if you wanted to move it back on the rear end. Okay. Michael, front suspension question. Bump steer on an IMCA modified. I've got bump out on the right front to about 0.025 at 3 inches compression. I bump out about 10 thousandths on the left front at 1 inch compression. My question is, the left front lives in rebound, so am I towing it in as the wheel drops out in the 0.20 range at 2 inches? Should I worry about this? Is this the norm? Pretty sure, well, I'll stop right there. It's pretty much the norm because there's such a split second that there's load, that there's a lot of load on that left front, and you would want it to bump out. So you're right on that 1 inch of movement, because that's about, when we put cameras on the cars, that's about where it's going to get. It's going to get 2 inches of drop easily the rest of the way, and it's actually going to toe in some, because with the left front, you just can't, I mean, if you actually check the right front on rebound, which we never do, it would be towing in too, because with the stock steering stuff that we've got to run, it's not ideal to get everything perfect, and I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, in fact, I think we actually have more bump out than that 0.2. I think you did a great job there. Anyway, so should I worry about this, or is that the norm? I think it's kind of the norm. Pretty sure I'm near the center of the arc, so I might be able to get a little bump out on extension with some mods, but the sacrifice is compression bump. I still think you're going to want compression bump to be towed out, so that when the car goes in the corner and the driver lifts for that split second to set the car, and the left front loads, because it's just, and it's evidently that it's loading, because if we need the car to be tighter, we stiffen up the spring on the left front. But it's such a minute split second that actually happens. Otherwise, the rest of the time, the stuff on the left front's kind of just along for the ride. So anyway, I feel like I have a better traditional bump on compression out. Sorry for the long text. What are your thoughts? Well, I think, that's kind of my opinion. I don't, you guys share your opinion.
I agree 100%. That left front on that initial inch of travel has got to go out, because it's going to help the car turn in the corner.
Yeah.
I'd say the guy's pretty good where he is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're as good as he is, to be honest with you. I was looking at these numbers and I'm thinking, Jesus, how the hell did he do that? Okay, we've got about 10 more minutes. So if we got some more questions, Owen, why do you think IMCA got rid of the short bar and added the J bar instead? Well, I think it was just another one of the, I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, it's another one of the skyrocket deals. His cars were so fast with that short panhard bar, and I think they didn't want it to get out of hand and go too short, and they were nervous that it might go the other way. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to say that's probably why they come up with that 19-inch rule on the J bar. What's your thoughts on that, Chad? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember why they outlawed it. It's been 19 ever since I've been involved, so that was pre my involvement.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of about the same time as the torque arm was.
Torque arm.
Yep.
I got to think though that really it's about drivability. I think if people got a little greedy on that shortness on that left side deal, they were losing a lot of drivability and causing wrecks and havoc. I think probably a smart thing to do to keep guys on a minimum there.
And I think that's exactly what their reasoning was. Now that you mention it that way, because the cars, for a driver that had a tremendous amount of experience, there was a lot of potential there. But for somebody who didn't have an awful lot of laps, the car could get in, catch a rut, and it would just be miserable.
There was a time and place for it for sure, but
Right.
people would run it all the time.
Justin, how much lead or trail should you start with on an IMCA stock car? Well, you always have to remember whatever you start with in static is not what the race car is ever going to see anyway, really. Because what you're really tuning is you're really actually tuning how much steer it actually does get, because when the car goes through its motion and gets in dynamic, you're going to have roll steer involved to the point where, so when you're setting it, whether, say for example, if you're putting lead in the right rear trailing arm to get the car to turn, what you're basically doing is you're just putting more steer in the car. So that's kind of how that works. But to answer your question from a static position, I always start with the car straight up. And then race wise, we actually run, probably as much as a half an inch of lead in the car. The only time we'd ever put trail in something like that is if it rained for 40 days and 40 nights and they never got on the racetrack and they still ran the race. The racetrack was so heavy. That's about the only time I'd ever actually do it. Jeffrey says that they thought it would keep the left front on the ground. Right rear wheel offset. I run a 3-inch off and I have a 2-inch offset. When moving the tire out, I'm making the car tighter. Thanks. Love the show. You guys do a great job. Actually, no. When you would move the tire out, you would free the car up. What we actually run is that I recommend a standard 3-inch offset. And then I tell the customers that they need to have a 1/2-inch wheel spacer and a 1-inch wheel spacer, depending on how far they want to move that out and how free they need to get it. Like Jake McBurney's car last year, a lot of times we had to run the 1-inch wheel spacer, so it would have been equal to a 2-inch wheel. So, the downside of having different wheel offsets is it's not as tunable easily as it is if you have wheel spacers instead. Joshua, how many laps do you recommend to go on your shocks before sending them in for inspection oil change? Kind of depends on actually where you're racing, the conditions that you're racing under, and we kind of go by nights. But on an average, we usually try to tell people that after they run about 25 nights, the left front, you could probably run that shock full season. Your right front is the one that's going to take a lot of abuse, and your right rear is going to take a lot of abuse, and the left rear gets a lot of travel. The big thing is the travel on the right rear. It's not so much that you get a lot of travel back there, but the piston travels at such high speed that it creates heat in the oil quite a bit, and it actually gets the oil hotter. The left rear, if you don't have like one of Chad's shock protectors on it, or shaft protectors, you're going to get dirt in the seals, and eventually the seal's going to start to give out a little bit, and there's going to get more dirt in there. But we had a guy send some stuff in that hadn't been in for like 3 or 4 years, and you couldn't even see the piston. There was so much sludge on it. So as a rule of thumb, we tell the customers about 25 nights of racing. Joel, how much drop from center line of axle to mounting point of the shock and slider on the bird cage? That's a great question.
I would say that most cars are at a 6 or 7 inch drop on the back for the spring. It kind of depends on the chassis builder where they have the car set up for. The front then with the shock is going to be just, you don't want to overextend it, or you don't want to compress it all the way. So you need to look at put the car dynamic, let the right front down, jack the left rear up, get it at dynamic state, and make sure that you're not topping out your front shock or your rear slider. That's the most important thing, is that you have range of motion. So I would definitely make sure you go through the whole range of motion. Then when you go up and down, you're basically slowing it or speeding it. When you go down on it, you're making that arc bigger and slowing the motion down. So if you wanted to have that for an adjustment in your back pocket, I would say on a bigger track, your rear spring would be lower, and on a shorter track, it would be higher.
Awesome. They've been busy building A-frames, Joel?
Yeah. Well, everybody, all the guys have been busy doing a little bit of everything, but for sure, yep.
Awesome. Marcus, thoughts about true coilover on left rear versus shock and coilover eliminator on an IMCA modified? Why don't you take that one, Chad?
So, coilover behind definitely going to free the car up in and gives it traction, instant traction. The thing that a lot of guys complain about that don't like it is, it's kind of a little bit, when you decel, it's a little bit more violent. That's where the free comes from. And it does have a lot of traction. And sometimes, depending on who the driver is and how they react to that tight feel, if a driver instantly feels like he's got a lot of grip and that he feels like he's going to be tight, the first instinct is to throttle so that he doesn't go up, run into his neighbor, or hit the wall. So generally, from a drivability standpoint, if it shows you tight and you're breaking that traction and you can't control that traction, you're defeating the purpose. So drivability wise, split is lights out better than coilover behind.
Well, once again, I also got to remember, don't forget, everybody, June 24th, Boone Speedway is going to be the place to be. That's going to be the 33rd annual Harris Clash event. We're looking forward to that. Harris Clash by Wehrs Machine and Racing Products. Look forward to that every year. And Joel, of course, has been our Hard Charger award. CRS has been our Hard Chargers award for the last as long as I can remember. You guys have been great sponsors of that event and supported it very well over the years. And looking forward to the move to Boone. I know there's a lot of customers that are looking forward to it. Some customers, maybe, there's a lot of people that still love Deer Creek, and I love Deer Creek. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Deer Creek's probably one of my favorite speedways. And I'm going to really miss, when we drove up there the other day and we went by the exit to go to the racetrack, I'm like, damn, I'm going to hate this. But then again, I thought to myself, my 19-minute or my 39-minute drive home from Boone's a lot better than my 3-hour drive from Deer Creek. So I settled down and came to conclusions that it'll be okay. Next week, we're going to have Damon Murdy. Damon was fresh off a feature win down there in Alabama at the Clash on the Coast. And so he's going to be our guest for next week's edition. And so right now we've got everybody needs to come to the CRS open house next weekend. If you're not doing anything, it's definitely worth the trip. And you don't have to be a member of the class. The CRS is open the whole entire time, and actually a couple nights till like 9 o'clock or so. So there's plenty of time to get your shopping done. And like I said, you can go to their website and you can see what all they have, and they've got whatever you might need. They have it. So thanks again, Joel, for bringing us out there, and we're looking forward to it again. And thanks again.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to Pennsylvania. Can't wait. Did you spit shine the floors or?
Not yet, but that's going to happen here probably Wednesday night.
It was amazing how clean that place is.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like I tell everybody at my shop, I said, if I was 20 years younger, that would be my dream shop. There's no doubt in my mind. I would just hire Joel to come out and design a shop for me out here in Iowa. And that place is just awesome. I mean, it's worth the trip just to see the place. I mean, you've got an awesome facility there, Joel.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on, and we'll see you guys in a couple days.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks everybody.
Chad.
Yep. Have a good night.